who an empath becomes after absorbing the narcissist's darkness and survives. Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars. These words, by Khalil Gibran, remind us that pain is not the end, but the doorway to transformation. In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we will uncover who the empath becomes after carrying the darkness of a narcissist and surviving something Carl Jung himself never fully warned us about. As you listen, I invite you to reflect on your own journey of growth. How has suffering shaped your strength? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your story might be the light someone else needs today. 1. Transformation, not just healing. An empath who has endured the depths of narcissistic abuse does not simply recover. They undergo a profound metamorphosis that Carl Jung would describe as individuation, the process of integrating light and shadow to become whole. The person who once carried projections, criticisms, and manipulations now emerges stronger, clearer, and untouchable. As Jung declared, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And through this crucible of pain, the empath chooses to become something extraordinary. For years, they absorb the narcissist's darkness, taking in every fragment of rage, shame, and emptiness until their own identity blurred into the shadows of another. Yet this very suffering becomes the fire that forges their intelligence and spiritual wisdom. Healing is no longer about returning to a former self. It is about transcending into someone the narcissist never anticipated. Autonomous, sovereign, and unshakably resilient. This transformation begins quietly. The empath stops defending themselves to those who never listened, stops seeking validation from those who offered only conditional affection, and starts drawing boundaries that carry silent authority. In this silence lies their power, a calm refusal to be diminished. Their presence alone unsettles others, not through aggression, but through an unspoken clarity that forces people to confront the shadows they once projected outward. What blossoms is not bitterness, but discernment, a sharpened ability to distinguish illusion from truth. The empath evolves into a mirror, reflecting back what others cannot bear to see within themselves. They no longer shoulder the burden of another's brokenness. Instead, they embody Jung's vision of individuation, standing whole and complete. Like a caterpillar, dissolving into chaos before becoming a butterfly, they disintegrate under pressure, yet rise with wings stronger than steel. From this journey arises immunity, an untouchable spirit that has mastered survival and transformed it into sovereignty. Their resilience is not loud, but it is undeniable. Their wisdom is not theoretical, but lived, earned, and etched into their very being. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. The empath, through their suffering, now embodies this truth, no longer swayed by manipulation or bound by the shadows of others. What once seemed like the end becomes the awakening. Survival was never the final destination. Transformation was always the hidden gift. In transcending pain, the empath becomes a force the world cannot ignore, living proof that from the darkest suffering can emerge the brightest intelligence and the deepest spiritual wisdom. Comment below. I rise through transformation, not just healing. If you are ready to step into your true spiritual awakening. 2. The Night Sea. Shadow Immersion Crucible. The descent into the night sea is the breaking point of the empath, a crucible where everything familiar collapses and the false self begins to die, so the authentic self can finally be born. Carl Jung described this as the dark night of the soul, where consciousness is forced through pain into transformation. For the empath, this descent is brutal, because for years they have been the vessel of other people's shadows, absorbing rage, shame, emptiness, and despair that were never theirs to carry. They became the emotional container for wounds that were not their own, and over time, their identity dissolved under the weight of everyone else's unprocessed pain. This immersion into shadow feels like drowning, stripping away defenses and exposing the raw truth beneath. Yet this very dismantling becomes the sacred ground for metamorphosis, the way a caterpillar dissolves completely in the cocoon before emerging as a butterfly. In spirituality, this is the shadow initiation, a passage every empath must face if they are to awaken into their true power. The false self, built on survival, people-pleasing, and silent endurance, cannot survive the descent. It crumbles under the unbearable weight, leaving only the essence that was hidden all along. And it is here, in the breaking, that something miraculous occurs. The empath surrenders. They stop fighting to explain themselves to people who were never listening. They stop defining their worth by how much they can carry for others. In that quiet surrender, clarity is born, and with clarity comes an immunity to manipulation. Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And through this crucible, the empath learns that truth firsthand. The suffering is not meaningless. It is the initiation into wisdom. As they rise from this immersion, they no longer return as the fragile soul who once absorbed everything. They emerge untouchable, not hardened by bitterness, but fortified by spiritual wisdom. Their very presence becomes unsettling to those who still live in denial, because when you embody light forged in shadow, you act as a mirror that forces others to confront their own hidden darkness. This is the paradox of the empath's transformation. By walking through fire, they become fireproof, and by drowning in the sea of shadows, they emerge as a light that cannot be extinguished. In modern life, where people are overwhelmed by digital noise, social projections, and endless expectations, this awakening is more than personal, it is necessary. It reminds us that survival is not about carrying burdens that do not belong to us, but about aligning with the truth that was always within. The empath's night sea journey reveals that the descent is not the end, but the beginning. Not punishment, but preparation. Spiritual awakening demands that we shed illusions, endure the breaking, and allow the authentic self to rise. For those in the midst of their own crucible, the message is clear. Do not fear the unraveling. Embrace it, for it is shaping you into someone unshakable, someone who embodies strength and compassion in equal measure. Darkness cannot control the soul that has already walked through its depths and found its own light. And from that light comes not only survival, but sovereignty. Comment below. I rise from the night sea stronger, if you are ready to embrace your transformation. 3. Shadow literacy and psychological immunity. When an empath carries the denied shadow material of others, they are unknowingly initiated into one of the deepest lessons of spirituality and spiritual development. For in absorbing projections and manipulations, they slowly begin to see the architecture of the shadow, with piercing clarity. What once felt like a curse, the heaviness of holding other people's shame, fear, or rage, becomes the very training ground where discernment is born. Through enduring this burden, the empath develops what can only be described as shadow antibodies or shadow immunity, an inner capacity to read manipulation, to reject projections, and to no longer be bound by the hidden scripts others try to impose. Just as the body strengthens itself through exposure to sickness, the soul of the empath grows resilient by transforming the toxins of others into wisdom and awareness, turning pain into a rare spiritual strength. Carl Jung reminded us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this is exactly the path the empath walks. By being forced to confront the unconscious in others, the empath becomes skilled at seeing the unseen, recognizing the fear behind aggression, the shame behind control, the emptiness behind constant demands. This literacy of the shadow means that the empath is no longer easily deceived, no longer manipulated by surface appearances, and no longer caught in the exhausting cycle of over-explaining themselves to people who never wanted to understand. Instead, they carry a quiet, unshakable clarity that acts as a shield, a psychological immunity that protects their energy and restores their freedom. In modern life, where projections fly everywhere in toxic families, corporate politics, and especially on social media, the gift of shadow immunity is more necessary than ever. Most people absorb these projections unconsciously, mistaking other people's insecurities as their own, drowning in energy that doesn't belong to them. But an empath who has gone through the crucible of survival begins to walk differently. They no longer carry what was never theirs, and they no longer feel the need to justify their truth. Their spirituality matures into a balanced strength. They can sense manipulation before it takes root. They can step back from chaos without guilt, and they can remain rooted even in the storm of other people's emotions. This transformation is not just personal, it is contagious. The empath who has become immune begins to radiate a presence that forces others to face their own shadows. Their silence, their refusal to play the old roles, their ability to stand firm without bitterness, unsettles those who are still hiding from themselves. In this way, the empath becomes not only untouchable, but also a mirror, a guide, and a catalyst for truth. Their spirituality no longer exists only in private prayers or moments of retreat. It lives in their presence, in the way they embody boundaries, in the way they hold themselves with dignity. The message hidden within this journey is simple yet profound. Suffering can become initiation, pain can become power, and survival can lead to wisdom. For the empath, the experience of absorbing and transforming darkness is not a sentence, but a sacred preparation, creating within them a strength that cannot be faked or taught in books. This is what spiritual development truly means, transforming shadow into light, weakness into strength, wounds into wisdom. And once this immunity is awakened, the empath no longer fears the darkness of others, because they know that within themselves, they already carry the light strong enough to withstand it. If you're ready to master shadow literacy and build true psychological immunity, don't hesitate to like, subscribe, and share your reflections in the comments. Let's awaken together. 4. From wounded healer to shadow walker. When an empath emerges from the suffocating grip of a narcissist's darkness, they are no longer the same person. They are reborn into what can only be described as a shadow walker, one who carries both the intelligence of survival and the spiritual wisdom gained from walking through fire. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This truth becomes the empath's reality. After carrying the rage, shame, and emptiness of others, after being the vessel for projections that nearly erase their sense of self, the empath discovers a transformation so profound that manipulation can no longer touch them. Their very presence now exposes the shadows of those around them, forcing others to confront the very darkness they once tried to escape by dumping it on someone else. The wounded healer becomes something different, something rarer. No longer trapped in cycles of reliving the wound, the survivor embodies strength by example, not by performance. They become whole, not by constantly bleeding for others, but by standing in quiet, unshakable clarity. This is the archetype of the shadow walker, someone who can walk into human darkness without being consumed by it. Someone who does not seek validation through sacrifice, but instead radiates truth through being. Jung also reminded us that the shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. The empath, once desperate to fit into others' molds, now recognizes the futility of abandoning themselves for approval. Their worth no longer hangs on the opinions of others. It is anchored in their inner alignment, their lived wisdom, their ability to see and not be swayed. This transformation is more than healing. It is spiritual immunity. The empath no longer absorbs arrows meant to break them. Instead, they stand so centered that the arrows dissolve before reaching their heart. Silence becomes their shield, unsettling those who thrive on chaos, while calm becomes their sword, disarming the manipulative with its quiet strength. This is what it means to awaken, to turn empathy inward, to master one's own energy, and to realize that true compassion does not mean self-destruction. Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people." The shadow walker embodies this truth, carrying scars as wisdom, not as open wounds, and teaching others that resilience is not spoken, it is lived. To become a shadow walker is to embody the alchemy of survival. It is proof that poison can be transmuted into medicine, that suffering can evolve into sacred strength. This path shows that empathy, once weaponized against you, can be reclaimed as the deepest form of intelligence. The empath, who has endured and transcended, no longer fears the shadows within or around them, because they have discovered that the very darkness which threatened to destroy them has carved out a light unshakable, untouchable, and undeniable. They no longer absorb pain. They transform it, and in doing so, they silently grant others the permission to rise with them. 5. Ego death. The empath's path is defined by a moment when the false identity built on pleasing others finally shatters, and what follows is a profound ego death. This is not destruction, but liberation. For the old self that lived to carry burdens, to silence its own voice, and to survive through masks dissolves, leaving behind an emptiness that feels terrifying, yet necessary. Out of this emptiness emerges a choice, the decision to no longer live as the container of others' shadows, but to step into self-possession, to stand in authenticity, and to embrace radical self-acceptance that is not superficial, but forged through fire and pain. Carl Jung's reminder, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate, reveals the truth of this transformation. For the empath is no longer ruled by unconscious roles imposed by trauma, but by conscious alignment with their inner soul. In this rebirth, the empath stops explaining themselves to people who were never listening. They stop shrinking to make others comfortable, and they reclaim their sovereignty. Self-possession here is not arrogance. It is the quiet clarity that comes when you know who you are and no longer need external validation. It is spirituality expressed as lived truth, a spiritual awakening that carries the wisdom of pain yet refuses to remain defined by it. The empath who once absorbed rage, shame, and emptiness now radiates a presence that forces others to confront the shadows they project. This is why authenticity becomes untouchable. It cannot be manipulated, for it is rooted in awareness, not illusion. In today's world, where so many lose themselves to social expectations, workplace demands, and toxic cycles of overgiving, this transformation offers a powerful mirror. How often do you silence your needs to avoid conflict, or give away your energy just to keep the peace? That is the false identity at work, the ego mask that keeps you exhausted and unseen. Yet, when you choose to let that identity die, you begin to live not as a reflection of others' needs, but as your true self. Boundaries become acts of self-respect. Saying no becomes a declaration of freedom, and your presence begins to shift the energy of every room you enter. Jung was right when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And the empath, rising from darkness into authenticity, embodies that privilege in its fullest form. This is the gift hidden in ego death, the birth of authenticity, the strength of self-possession, and the wisdom of radical acceptance. It shows us that we do not exist to absorb pain endlessly, but to embody truth courageously. To step into this awareness is to embrace spirituality not as theory, but as a lived awakening, and in doing so, to finally become the self that was always waiting beneath the mask. Do you resonate with this truth? If you do, declare it boldly in the comments. I have faced ego death, and I rise stronger. 6. Boundaries, paradoxical magnetism, and guardian function. When an empath passes through the fire of a narcissist's darkness and emerges whole, they are no longer who they once were. For what once seemed like unbearable weight becomes the very crucible of their transformation. The empath learns that true spiritual development is not about endlessly absorbing other people's projections or carrying their unresolved pain, but about cultivating boundaries that are both firm and compassionate. These boundaries are not walls of coldness, but shields of clarity alive with empathy, yet impenetrable to exploitation, allowing the empath to give from wholeness rather than depletion. Sensitivity remains, but it is now guided by wisdom, no longer mistaken for weakness, and no longer confused with sacrifice. Carl Jung reminded us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. For the empath who has survived, this is no longer theory, but lived experience. They have faced unconscious shadows head-on, refusing to let them dictate the script of their lives. In doing so, they step into resilience, and resilience carries a magnetism that is both paradoxical and powerful. The same world that once dismissed their softness now feels drawn to the quiet strength they radiate. People sense safety in their presence, a respect that flows without demand, an authenticity that cannot be faked. This magnetism is not about charm or manipulation, but about the way boundaries command recognition. It is the aura of someone who no longer explains themselves to those who never listened, who no longer surrenders their soul to earn counterfeit love. This transformation brings with it an unexpected role: the guardian function. The empath becomes a living reminder that kindness does not mean self-betrayal, that generosity does not require self-destruction, and that spirituality is not naivety, but grounded wisdom. They no longer rescue others at their own expense, yet they inspire others by the sheer strength of their survival. Their life becomes a kind of lighthouse, not reaching into the sea to pull every drowning soul ashore, but standing tall, unshaken, shining light that guides others who are ready to find their way. They show that compassion paired with boundaries creates freedom, that love rooted in self-respect becomes a force that uplifts without being drained. At this stage, challenges do not disappear, but the empath carries a new kind of inner immunity. They can still sense another's pain, but they no longer mistake it for their own identity. They can recognize manipulation the moment it approaches, but they no longer bow to its demands. They can love with the same depth of heart, but now that love begins with themselves first. They are paradox embodied soft yet unbreakable, open yet untouchable, magnetic not because they seek attention, but because they have mastered presence. This is the hidden gift of their journey: to become both a mirror and a beacon, to reveal to others the possibility of living with both tenderness and sovereignty. The value of this transformation is timeless. Boundaries are not rejection. They are acts of sacred love. By honoring them, the empath honors life itself. By protecting their energy, they ensure that what they give flows from a place of purity rather than resentment. By choosing self-respect, they teach others how to respect themselves. This is where spirituality reveals its true meaning, not in losing oneself for others, but in awakening to the wisdom that the most compassionate gift one can offer the world is an authentic self that cannot be exploited. The empath who has survived becomes a symbol of this truth, carrying within them the proof that light, when tested in the deepest darkness, does not dim, but instead shines brighter than ever before. 7. Constellation effect and social disruption. When an empath absorbs the narcissist's darkness and survives, they do not return the same, because the very act of surviving reshapes them into a force of intelligence and spiritual wisdom that cannot be denied. The empath, once used as a silent container for everyone's shadows, now becomes a mirror of truth, reflecting back what others have worked so hard to hide. This is what Carl Jung described when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Your very presence begins to awaken a collective awareness, what some call the constellation effect, where simply being in the room forces people to confront the truth of themselves. This can ignite hostility in those terrified of their own reflection, yet it also attracts those yearning for transformation, who sense in you a clarity they cannot find elsewhere. This shift does not announce itself with anger or revenge, but with a quiet, sovereign strength. You stop explaining yourself to those who never cared to listen, because now your silence speaks louder than endless words. The narcissist, who once thrived on your confusion, now trembles at your clarity. For the empath they dismissed as weak has become untouchable. Your survival is not only healing, it is the reclaiming of your true self, no longer buried under the wreckage of someone else's chaos. This new energy radiates outward, compelling others to either awaken or retreat, because your existence now disrupts the illusions they cling to. Some will respond with bitterness, accusing you of being cold or selfish. But this is only projection, their unconscious fear meeting a mirror that cannot be broken. At the same time, seekers of truth will be drawn to you, pulled toward the wisdom carved from your scars. You become a beacon, not by choice, but by essence, embodying the alchemy of darkness turned into light, survival turned into spiritual awakening. Rumi's words echo here. The wound is the place where the light enters you. What once weighed you down with poison now radiates as a light too strong to be dimmed. Your presence ripples through the collective field like a morphic resonance, unsettling systems built on deception and forcing people to reckon with their own unacknowledged truths. This is why surviving a narcissist does more than heal you. It disrupts the very fabric of falsehood around you. You no longer play the role of the emotional dumpster, but rise as a guide, a disruptor, a living reminder that pain can be transmuted into clarity. And in that transformation, you embody the lesson Carl Jung never fully warned about. The empath who walks through darkness and emerges no longer fragile, but sovereign, untouchable, and radiant with spiritual wisdom. 8. Collective ripple and the cost of individuation. Individual transformation always carries more weight than we realize, because when an empath survives the darkness of a narcissist, their healing is never just personal. It becomes a collective ripple that whispers freedom to others who are still trapped. What once looked like unbearable pain becomes living evidence that liberation is possible. And this silent testimony awakens hope in those who thought they would never escape. Yet this gift comes with a price Carl Jung called individuation. The breaking away from the herd, the loneliness of standing apart, and the constant vigilance required to keep balance, because the danger of falling into rigidity always lingers when one rises from suffering. This loneliness is not punishment, but initiation, a threshold into deeper spirituality, where the empath learns that true strength is found in silence, and that authenticity often means walking paths few dare to tread. In the reality of modern life, this process is mirrored in the quiet decisions we make, refusing toxic dynamics at work, ending friendships that only thrive on our silence, or choosing solitude over shallow company. Each of these choices cuts ties with illusions, but each also plants the seed of sovereignty. And with time, those seeds grow into circles of resonance where energy is no longer drained but magnified. The one who once absorbed everyone's shadows now becomes a mirror, forcing others to face what they can no longer project. And this shift ripples outward, sparking collective transformation. Yet vigilance remains essential, because freedom itself can harden into a new identity if clung to too tightly. The empath must learn to hold balance, to embody resilience without rigidity, to guard compassion without slipping back into self-erasure, and to live from the center rather than the extremes. This is the paradox of spiritual awakening. By embracing loneliness, you become a lighthouse. By paying the cost of individuation, you open the door for others to see their own way out of darkness. What feels like separation is in truth sacred preparation, shaping you into someone who no longer needs to explain themselves to those who never listened. Someone who knows that silence can be louder than words. In time, your very presence begins to carry an intelligence born from suffering and survival, an unshakable wisdom that cannot be manipulated. And while the path is heavy, it holds the profound beauty of transformation. To turn shadow into clarity, pain into power, and solitude into a gift for the collective soul. And so, the journey of the empath does not end in destruction, but in rebirth, stronger, clearer, and untouchable. The darkness they once absorbed becomes the very fire that forges their light. If this message spoke to your soul, I invite you to join our growing community here at Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs this truth, and subscribe to the channel. And be sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss the insights and teachings we have prepared for you. Until next time, stay strong, stay awakened, and walk boldly in your light. This one shift in identity will bend reality faster than you think. As Carl Jung once said, "He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens." Today, I want to invite you to look inside and recognize the single shift in identity that can transform your entire reality faster than you can imagine. It's not about forcing change. It's about aligning with who you truly are. Imagine what would happen if you stopped carrying the burden of your old self and boldly stepped into the life that was waiting for you. How would your relationships, opportunities, or even your happiness evolve? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's explore this journey together on the Spiritual Wisdom channel. 1. Your old self is a frequency, not just a memory. Your old self is not just a memory. It is a frequency that continues to echo through your body and mind. It lives in your nervous system. It shapes your emotional reactions, and it influences the small decisions you make every day. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This truth explains why the same cycles keep repeating themselves no matter how much you wish for change. That heaviness in your chest when you wake up. The inner voice that quietly tells you not to expect too much. The patterns you swore you would never repeat but found yourself living again. All of it is the energy of your old identity trying to keep you loyal. As long as you carry it, reality cannot shift, because the world outside of you is only mirroring the vibration you refuse to release within. Your old identity is not only mental, it is energetic. The body holds on to what the mind cannot always remember. Every wound, every fear, every unresolved story is stored in your chemistry, your heartbeat, and the rhythm of your nervous system. Each time you repeat the same thought or replay the same emotion, you are not only remembering the past, you are broadcasting it into the present. Reality, sensitive to frequency, tunes itself to that signal. And no matter how hard you think, visualize, or affirm, if your vibration remains tied to who you have been, your life will keep repeating itself. Spiritual wisdom teaches that transformation begins when you release the energetic addiction to the old self, not when you try to force new beliefs on top of it. Carl Jung's work shows us that the persona we cling to becomes both mask and prison. It is not enough to change thoughts while your energy still vibrates in fear or scarcity. The quantum field does not respond to words, it responds to vibration. As Albert Einstein reminded us, everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. If your identity is your frequency, then holding on to an outdated self is like playing the same song on repeat while expecting a new melody to appear. You cannot step into a new life carrying the soundtrack of your old one. The song must end before the silence can give birth to something new. This is why so many remain stuck in cycles of effort without change. They affirm what they do not believe. They visualize outcomes while secretly doubting. They force themselves to think positive while their nervous system still trembles with fear. The result is inner conflict, a mismatch of signals that keeps the old reality alive. The one true shift is not in adding more effort, but in letting go of the old vibration entirely. It means breaking your loyalty to the identity that feels familiar, but keeps you small. It means recognizing that you cannot drag the past into the future and expect it to transform. Spiritual awakening is remembering that you are more than the stories you have repeated, that you are greater than the patterns that bound you, and that by choosing to detach from the old self, you step into the freedom of who you are becoming. When you release that old frequency, your entire system recalibrates. Your nervous system finds balance, your subconscious opens, and your energy begins to broadcast a new signal. Life responds with synchronicity. Opportunities appear. People show up. Reality bends, not because you forced it, but because you finally match the frequency of the life you desired. This is not magic. It is alignment. It is the intelligence of spiritual wisdom at work. The moment you stop being loyal to who you were, you give yourself permission to meet who you truly are. And when that happens, reality shifts with a speed and clarity that feels almost miraculous, because the truth is, it was always waiting for you to let go. Comment below, "I release my old frequency," if you are ready to let go of your past identity and step into the reality that truly belongs to you. 2. The quantum field responds to identity, not effort. Reality is not crafted by the empty repetition of affirmations, nor by the countless vision boards scattered with desires, but by the coherence of your inner state. The quantum field mirrors not your words, but your being. For in the grand weave of existence, you do not manifest what you want. You manifest who you are. Every vibration you hold, every belief that shapes your identity, becomes the signal the universe responds to. And your life shifts only when you shift vibrationally. As Carl Jung reminded us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That unconscious identity, living in your emotions and habits, is what truly bends reality. You may say the words, "I am abundant," but if beneath those words there still lingers fear, scarcity, and the hidden memory of lack, the quantum field will not be deceived. Words are only the surface. Energy is the truth. Your nervous system carries the frequency of your past. Your emotions broadcast your inner beliefs, and your chemistry repeats the patterns you swore you would leave behind. This is why so many people find themselves trapped in cycles. They chase new goals while embodying old wounds. The field listens not to what is said, but to what is consistently lived. To change the outer world, you must first change the invisible state that holds it in place. Coherence is the language of creation. If your identity is fractured, reality reflects the fracture. If your inner story is written in fear, reality presents the chapters of fear back to you. Yet when you begin to embody the frequency of the life you wish to experience, when you decide to step into the new identity with sincerity and constancy, the universe bends to meet you. This is the essence of spiritual awakening, not an abstract pursuit, but a transformation of self, a deliberate alignment of thought, feeling, and action with the reality you choose to live. You no longer beg for peace. You become peace. You no longer plead for love. You radiate love until life can do nothing but return it. Look closely at the world around you, and you will see this truth everywhere. The person who identifies as unlucky will overlook opportunities that appear daily, while the one who quietly embodies confidence and worth naturally attracts doors opening, hands reaching, paths unfolding. The difference is not luck, but identity. In spirituality, we learn that coherence creates magnetism, just as one tuning fork vibrates another into harmony. The quantum field reads this resonance with perfect accuracy and reflects it back without fail. The real question is never, how hard are you working? But rather, who are you while you work? Jung spoke of individuation, the process of integrating all aspects of the self into wholeness. And this is what the quantum field recognizes. You cannot live split between the self you pretend to be and the self you secretly believe you are. At some point, you must choose coherence over contradiction. This choice is not made once, but lived daily, in each thought aligned with your new self, in each decision that supports it, in each habit that reinforces it. Slowly, the old self dissolves and the new identity emerges, not as an illusion, but as your lived reality. The outer world is not chaos nor accident. It is a mirror of the coherence you cultivate within. Shift the identity, and you shift the reflection. The moment you step into the frequency of who you are becoming, the quantum field bends to your being. This is the wisdom at the heart of spirituality. You do not chase reality, you become it. Every day you are asked not, what do I want? But, who am I willing to be? And in that answer lies the power to bend reality itself. Leave your likes and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to activate the notification bell so you never miss insights like this. The quantum field responds to who you are, not just what you do. So type in the comments, I align my identity with abundance, to affirm your shift and inspire others on this journey. 3. Survival identity is the real block. Most people spend their lives hidden behind a mask that was built out of past pain, rejection, or failure. And although this mask was once a shield that kept them safe, it slowly became a prison that keeps them from growing. Carl Jung wisely said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And this is exactly what happens when you live through your survival identity. That false self, born out of wounds you never asked for, runs your choices, your relationships, your dreams, and even your sense of worth. It becomes the autopilot of your life, keeping you stuck in cycles you swore you would never repeat, yet find yourself trapped in again and again. This version of you is not your essence. It is a shell. Beneath it lies the real you, the one who is whole, capable of love, expansion, and transformation. waiting to awaken through spirituality and deep spiritual development. The truth is that energy follows identity, and if you continue to see yourself as unworthy, broken, or small, your external world will always mirror that belief. You cannot manifest abundance while carrying the vibration of lack, just as you cannot step into love while clinging to the identity of rejection. In today's world, this shows up in so many ways, settling for jobs that drain your soul because you do not believe better opportunities exist, holding on to relationships that dishonor your spirit because you fear being alone, or turning away from risks that could elevate you because failure feels more familiar than success. This survival self convinces you that it is protecting you, but in reality, it is keeping you from truly living. The moment you recognize this is the beginning of spiritual awakening, you start to see that the survival identity was never your destiny. It was only a temporary refuge for your wounded heart. When you finally ask yourself, "Who am I without my wounds?" you begin to take back the power that you unknowingly surrendered. Spiritual development is not about denying your past, but transforming your relationship with it, so it no longer dictates your future. Jung's reminder: "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become," becomes a guiding light. Choosing to release the survival identity is choosing freedom over fear, expansion over contraction, and alignment over illusion. Your life is no longer defined by old scars, but reshaped by the truth of who you really are. The old story begins to fade, and a new reality emerges, one that bends to the vibration of your authentic self, a reality alive with purpose, creativity, and possibility. Each small act of choosing authenticity over fear is an act of creation. Each moment you step out of autopilot and into awareness, you shift your energy into alignment. This is the work of spirituality, not to escape reality, but to reshape it from within. You are not here merely to survive. You are here to awaken, to grow, and to create a life that reflects your soul rather than your scars. And when you finally release the mask of survival, you realize that the true self has been ready all along, waiting for you to embrace it, to rise with it, and to step into the expansive life that was always meant to be yours. 4. Emotions are the gatekeepers of reality. Emotions are the silent architects of your life, shaping every experience you encounter, not through logic, but through vibration. When regret, shame, and fear dominate your inner world, they become more than fleeting feelings. They turn into magnetic broadcasts, drawing to you circumstances that echo those very states. Carl Jung once observed, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This truth reveals that when your emotions go unexamined, they quietly script the destiny you live out. If you seek love while carrying doubt and unworthiness, you will unconsciously block connection. If you dream of abundance, but dwell in the vibration of lack, no amount of effort will open the door, because your frequency is not aligned with prosperity. Change is always vibrational before it becomes intellectual. Intelligence may point you toward what you desire, but your emotions are the true gatekeepers of manifestation. They live in your nervous system, your subconscious, and in the micro decisions you make each day. When your emotional body is addicted to fear or shame, even your best thoughts are powerless to transform your life. The key is not to think harder, but to feel differently, to release the chemistry of the old self and embody the vibration of the new. Jung's spiritual wisdom teaches us that your identity is shaped less by what you think and more by the emotions you rehearse. The moment you release the cycle of emotional addiction, you shift from asking, "Do I deserve this?" to declaring, "I already embody this," and reality begins to bend in your favor. Emotions act like addictions because the body becomes chemically accustomed to them. Just as someone craves a substance, your nervous system can crave anxiety, shame, or fear, tricking you into recreating those feelings, even when peace is available. This is why breaking free requires more than mental strength. It requires emotional intelligence and spiritual wisdom. As Aristotle wrote, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. You must educate the heart to hold new vibrations, gratitude in place of lack, compassion in place of shame, courage in place of fear. These small but consistent choices reset your inner frequency and invite a new outer reality to meet you. Your emotions are not enemies, but signals. They show you the vibration you are sending into the world and the reality you are unconsciously attracting. When you begin to notice the emotions that dominate your days and intentionally practice the higher states of love, worthiness, and abundance, you are not only changing your mood, you are reshaping your destiny. Jung reminded us, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." By awakening to the field of emotions within, you step into a new identity where intelligence and spiritual wisdom merge. And from that place, reality itself reshapes to mirror your transformation. Comment below, "My emotions align with my reality," if you're ready to step into a new frequency and let your feelings open the door to abundance. 5. Observation shifts. Everything you are the observer. The moment you witness your old self without merging with it, you collapse its power, because observation itself becomes liberation. Carl Jung reminded us, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In quantum physics, the observer effect reveals that awareness creates reality. And when you observe your patterns from a place of higher intelligence and spiritual wisdom, you stop being the pattern and begin becoming the creator. Every repeated thought, every recycled emotion, every wound you have carried for years loses its grip the instant you shift into the role of the observer. For the one who sees is no longer bound by what is seen. To observe is to awaken, and awakening is to reclaim the authority that was always yours. It is like being inside a dream. Once you realize you are dreaming, the dream changes. The fear dissolves, the scenery bends, and suddenly you can choose to fly. Life works in the same way. When you awaken to the fact that you are not your wounds, not the voice of doubt, not the story of your past, you collapse the old identity and bend reality into a new form. This is the meeting point of spirituality and science, where the eternal soul recognizes its ability to create instead of repeat, to rise above the cycles that once defined it. Spiritual awakening is not about denying your patterns. It is about observing them so clearly that they no longer own you. In modern life, this shift becomes incredibly practical. At work, your old self might panic and whisper, "I can't handle this." But the observer pauses and simply notices the thought, creating the space for clarity and new solutions. In love, when an old wound is triggered, the old self reacts defensively, but the awakened observer sees the pain without becoming it. choosing instead to respond with compassion. This shift is not a distant ideal. It is a tool available in every breath, in every moment where you remember that your awareness is stronger than your automatic reaction. Observation is creation, because the quantum field responds to the signal of your awareness. When you remain unconscious, you broadcast the frequency of your old identity, and reality mirrors it back. But the instant you awaken into presence, you send a new vibration, and life reshapes itself around it. As Rumi said, try to accept the changing seasons of your soul, even when the winter feels endless, because spring is already waiting inside you. Do not fight your old self. Do not shame it, and do not lose yourself in it. Simply observe. The one who observes is free, and in that freedom, you reclaim your true role, not as the pattern that repeats, but as the creator who chooses. Stay connected with our spiritual wisdom community by subscribing to the channel. Here, we explore how shifting your identity and stepping into the role of the observer can transform your reality. Remember, you are not just a participant in life. You are the observer, capable of reshaping your world with awareness. 6. Identity shift is the foundation of true manifestation. You cannot access the timeline of your future self while still carrying the emotional weight and behavioral patterns of your past, because your past isn't just behind you. It lives in your nervous system, in your reactions, in the tone of your inner dialogue, and in the choices you keep repeating. The future version of you already exists, not as a distant dream, but as a frequency in the quantum field, vibrating with a different emotional tone, mindset, and posture. You don't have to chase that future. You must become it. This is the essence of spiritual development, aligning your current identity with the version of you who already lives that future. Spirituality is not about detachment from reality, but conscious embodiment of a more expanded one. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That's exactly why the first step to transforming your outer world is transforming the self that is experiencing it. You shift by disrupting the loop, becoming aware of who you are being, and choosing, moment by moment, to respond as your future self would. Your thoughts create your emotional tone. Your emotions condition your biology, and your biology determines how you behave. And all of this becomes the vibration you send into the world. If that vibration matches your old self, rooted in fear, doubt, or hesitation, then reality reflects more of the same. But when you begin to condition your body to a new state, calm, confident, disciplined, then your external world rearranges to mirror that internal coherence. Identity is not a fixed trait. It's a practice state. Every time you sit up straighter, breathe deeper, respond instead of react, and think in alignment with the person you want to be, you are shifting into a new energetic frequency that collapses the gap between you and your future. This is not a fantasy. It is the science of intention meeting repetition. Your brain rewires based on repetition. Your emotions recalibrate based on your focus. Your behaviors, when made consistently, become traits, and those traits become your lived character. This is how real transformation happens, subtle but powerful. Don't wait for a new outcome to validate your new self. Be the new self now, and the outcomes will begin to orbit around your alignment. Choose spiritual wisdom over emotional reflex. Create rituals that anchor you, Start your day with breath, with clarity, with purpose. Walk through your life as someone who knows they are enough, who acts with dignity even when no one is watching. Speak with intentional words. Move with grace. Say no when your energy says no, and say yes only when your soul says yes. Surround yourself with people who reflect your growth, not your wounds. Remember, transformation isn't a thunderclap. It's a series of micro choices done consistently, day by day, hour by hour. Don't seek proof, seek alignment. And when you slip, don't shame yourself. Return to center and begin again. That's the path of real identity shift. That's how you bend reality, not through effort, but through becoming. 7. Ritual and embodiment anchor the shift. Transformational change is not a single moment of decision. It's a sacred discipline, a devotion to who you are becoming. You don't shift your identity by thinking differently for one day. You shift by showing up daily with intention. Carl Jung said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." And this is the essence of true transformation. It happens through the micro choices you make when no one is watching. When you choose to visualize who you are meant to be. When you speak truth over your life even before it shows up in your reality. When you emotionally embody a new frequency even while traces of the old still linger. Saying, "I no longer collapse the past. I tune into who I truly am," is not just a powerful declaration. It is a command to your nervous system, your subconscious, and the field of reality to reorganize itself around a higher truth. It's a daily signal to the quantum universe that you're ready to release the identity built in survival and step into the one anchored in spiritual intelligence. Your past is not just a memory, it's a vibration. It lives in your chemistry, in your reactions, in the way you carry your body and respond to uncertainty. But here's the hidden wisdom. Just as trauma can be encoded, healing can be embodied. Ritual becomes the bridge between who you were and who you are becoming. Embodiment becomes the proof that your spiritual awakening is real. The body, the breath, the voice are all instruments of your soul's remembering. When you practice becoming the new self over and over again, you collapse the energetic imprint of the old self. And the universe, intelligent as it is, responds not to your desire, but to your signal. You are not asking the world to shift for you. You are becoming the version of you who already lives in the world you desire. This is why intelligence isn't enough. You can study manifestation, read Jung, and understand all the theories of psychology and energy. But if you don't live the frequency, if you don't feel it, speak it, walk it, you'll always remain on the edge of transformation, close enough to see it, but too far to live it. The quantum field does not respond to wishful thinking. It responds to coherence between your inner truth and your outer expression. You become magnetic when your vibration is consistent, when your inner declarations match your outer embodiment. Every time you choose peace instead of panic, purpose instead of passivity, faith instead of fear, you are rewiring your reality and making it impossible for the old version of you to survive. You're not just changing your life, you're changing your identity. And once you do that, the world around you has no choice but to mirror the shift. 8. The field bends when you do. The field bends when you do, not because of wishful thinking, but because reality is attuned to the frequency you carry within. When you shift your inner posture, the world around you responds, rearranging itself in ways that might feel mysterious, yet are rooted in resonance. You don't drag the future toward you like a heavy weight. You grow into the version of yourself that belongs to that future, and by doing so, you step naturally into a new path. The vibration you hold your emotions, your beliefs, the stories you repeat to yourself sets the tone of your reality. And when that tone changes, life itself begins to rearrange. Suddenly, synchronicities increase, resistance dissolves, and doors you once thought were locked quietly swing open. This is not magic in the sense of illusion. It is the natural consequence of resonance, like a tuning fork vibrating in harmony with another. Your inner life is like a transmitter, broadcasting a signal into the field of possibilities. When you tune to a new frequency, the static of the past fades and a new song plays. In daily life, this begins with micro habits. How you speak to yourself when old doubts rise. How you breathe when fear tightens your chest. How you choose your words when describing your future. Each of these small acts rewires the nervous system, and over time they change your baseline state. Instead of reacting from old wounds, you begin to act from alignment. Carl Jung spoke of transformation as a meeting with the unconscious. You do not destroy your shadow, but integrate it, and integration alters your energetic signature. Spirituality, at its essence, is not about escaping this world, but about awakening within it, realizing that identity is fluid, that you are not trapped by the past, but are capable of creating from the present moment. To apply this in modern life, consider the areas where you feel most stuck. Perhaps it is in your work, where patterns of self-doubt make you settle for less, or in relationships, where old fears keep you repeating the same dynamics. Begin by changing the small responses. Say no where you once said yes out of fear. Breathe deeply before you speak words of anger. Declare truths about who you are becoming until your body begins to believe them. Over weeks and months, these micro shifts compound, and the field around you adjusts. Opportunities align with your new tone. People treat you as the person you are becoming, and resistance fades because you are no longer feeding it with old energy. This is usable spirituality, not lofty ideals removed from daily life, but practical inner engineering that produces visible results. Spiritual awakening happens here when you choose new rituals, new thoughts, and new emotional responses that elevate your vibration. It is not about perfection, it is about consistency. The field bends when you do, and the evidence appears in real, measurable ways. The right conversation arrives at the right time. The job opens up when you are ready. The relationship blossoms because you have shifted within. The question is not whether reality will respond. It always does. The question is whether you are willing to make the small but steady changes that invite life to mirror the person you are becoming. And that's where we'll leave it for today. Remember, this one shift in identity can transform not only how you see yourself, but how reality itself bends around you. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos filled with insights that guide your spiritual awakening and growth. Until next time, keep walking boldly into the life that is waiting for you.